Hey everybody, welcome back to another season of Being Unapologetically Authentic with your host, Jean Tian. That's me. In this season, we are exploring the intersectionality of authenticity with an ethnic flair and success. I am so excited to be able to provide this platform to bring on the voices of Asian Americans, particularly Asian American females, so that they can share their stories of how they have overcome social and cultural conditioning, as well as their own personal stories in order to find their own success. This is a super powerful season. I cannot wait for you guys to hear their stories. I am breaking down cultural norms for you. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 3 of the Being Unapologetically Authentic podcast. And I'm so excited to have you guys back and join me for a special episode with my guest today, Linh. Linh serves as a guide and teacher at the Modern Mystery School, which is the lineage of King Salomon. From a disconnected, stressed out, to a fulfilled life, Linh supports other motivated clients to love themselves, live a purpose-driven life, and create loving relationships. You won't want to miss this episode as Linh shares with us more about her childhood, how she came to where she is today, as well as how the power of choice was a life changer for her. Let's get started, guys.
So I'm so excited to have Linh in this episode of the conversation because she is talking about the power behind choice. And I think we're going to have such a great conversation because I also agree that choice is really a superpower that we don't get to utilize all that often. And so I can't wait for her to be able to share her story with us and hopefully for you guys to take away something that you can utilize in your life as well. So Linh, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your background with us.
Hi, thank you so much, Jen, for having me on the podcast. And hi, everyone who's watching and listening. I am Linh Lei. I am a certified spiritual guide, life activation practitioner, as well as a teacher in the Modern Mystery School in the lineage of King Salomon. And my mission is to help people live, know who they are better, understand and start fulfilling their purpose, and do so from a place of joy and awe and hope for a better world. Ultimately, my mission is to, together with so many other people, to build world peace, which I think is something that we all desire.
Yeah, and it's something that's so necessary these days, right? Just given the events, the world events over the past, I would say like at least 3 years, things just have shifted so much. So I think we're all desiring a bit of world peace in our lives these days. So I'd love to hear a bit about, so let me take a step back. This season is really about amplifying Asian American voices, especially Asian American women voices, because I know that my ethnicity as well as my gender has impacted a lot of the choices and the decisions that were that I thought were available to me and that have molded and shaped who I am today. And so this is why I'm so excited to have you on, because I'd love for you to be able to share your story as well, right? Being an Asian American female growing up, what was that like for you? Did you have a very, typical childhood in the sense that life was kind of already planned out for you in terms of where you needed to go, the good grades, etc. And then what I'd also love to know is how did you get to this point where you realized that you did have a choice?
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Jen. That's such an awesome question. So I was born and raised in Vietnam, and I left for the States when I was 16, all on my own. So my childhood was, I guess, it really depends on how you look at it. From the outside, it looked very sheltered. I had a good life. I had supposedly like good family life growing up. Everything was, everything physical, right, was in a way provided for. I had clothes. I always had food on the table. Never had to worry about, helping my parents pay rent, that kind of thing. But inside, like within the family unit. Like there was just a lot of disharmony, just a lot of, what I used to say unhappiness, but just a lot of this, honestly, misery. And I was very, very sensitive to that, even though nobody said anything, like, especially when you're a little kid, like, people try not to worry you, but I could sense, how my parents weren't happy. And I just looked at, my family, but also other families, and this something wasn't right, like where I felt, or people would go to work, go home, maybe like cook or eat dinner, watch TV. Nowadays, binge Netflix, right? Same thing. And then go to bed, and trying like talking about paying bills. So all these things that I guess like this did help. Does help with surviving, but I've always felt like something was missing. I just couldn't, like my little head, my little brain couldn't understand why I would be born here, to suffer, because that's all that I could see, suffering, um, um, just people not living to their full potential. And so that was really hard for me to grow, like growing up, and also emotionally and mentally, I didn't really have like a stable figure in my life to kind of guide me through this thought. So I mostly just kept pretty much everything to myself. And also just had like, traumas when I was little that just taught me that I was not safe in the world. That, like the world is out to get me, and I had nobody. I just felt completely alone for the most part of my childhood, really. Yeah, so that's where I was, and I was, I left for the U.S. when I was 16, and I'm really, really grateful for my parents, for providing me that opportunity. Because even though I would say, they definitely were a little bit more traditional, like they, um, like again, like what I was saying, because I feel like whatever I share is very common in Asian household. There's that, expectation of certain thing you need to do, but at the same time, I've always been very rebellious. Again, when you have that thought in your mind, then
Yeah.
you have to do something about it. And so I'm really grateful that they let me leave home at 16. And even I think back in the day in Vietnam, there's a ideology that if you let your child leave the nest too early, you'll lose them. So I do think they were brave to do that. But I also think it's just part of my mission to be in the U.S. and to eventually find a mission school. So they helped me to do that.
That's amazing. And so what motivated you, or what brought on the desire to leave Vietnam to come to the US? Was it for school, or was it just for a different life?
So it's funny. So when we're talking about choices, right, I think there's always an external view and also the internal view. So externally, yes, it's for studying, right? It's for better opportunities, which I think that's from my parents' perspective. Like they were, because being in Vietnam, is hard. It's like at least it was, it was very like cutthroat. Like especially if you live in like a developing country, you can't trust anybody. That's how we was raised. Like you always have to like worry for yourself first, thing kind of thing, because there's just like a lot of chaos. And so my parents, out of love, they sent me to a place where we shouldn't have to really like worry so much for our survival. And I really love I really love America, compared to how I grew up. Like, yeah, of course, there's everybody, any country can do better, but like here there are just that trust in humans, that like that you really don't find, at least where I was. And I came from like middle class, so like good background. Yeah, so externally that's the reason, but internally, honestly, I wanted to run away.
Wow, that's so powerful.
It
Yeah.
was hard to be there. I wanted to run away, but also again, now that I think back, I think it's just part of like that. I just needed to be here in the US. Went to college, start working, and eventually to find my spiritual path.
I love that. And I also love the fact that you had mentioned in terms of your life in Vietnam too, is that there was a lot of disharmony, but everybody pretended that It didn't exist. And I think that that is so common in many households, but I think particularly in Asian households. And so I think that, growing up, seeing this, because for me, that's what I had seen as well, although I don't think my parents pretended as much, but I think there is this common theme of let's just not have it exist. Like, let's pretend it doesn't exist, right? And we also don't talk about it externally. So I think the choice to come and talk about it is super powerful because it breaks us out of the societal and cultural conditioning that we've been raised with, right? And so I wanted just to applaud you for coming out and for sharing, because that is something that I think not too many of us talk about, but I think more of us should talk about. And I think the more that we talk about it, I think the more that we can normalize the fact that not everything is perfect. And growing up, I don't know about you, but growing up, I felt there was a need to be perfect. And so, if we can normalize imperfection, I think we can avoid some of the trauma that, comes with the upbringing of, being Asian.
Yeah, and you're totally, and you brought up perfectionism. Of course, like anybody, right, would have, that can feel that pressure. But I do notice in myself, in others Asians, but also I actually have gotten a comment from somebody who's not Asian, somebody who worked closely with me as a spiritual guide in the mission school. She meant, because she was a teacher to elementary school students. She mentioned that she noticed that the Vietnamese kids would be so hard on themselves, where like they would be writing like perfect, letters, and they would still, like just not be satisfied about it. And it's heartbreaking, like to think of the kids doing that, but also remembering that, I'm sure you did too, like remembering that I myself used to do that so much, where we just kind of self-police what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to say, what we're supposed to think. There just used to be so much shame and guilt, um, and yeah, like a lot of like needing to pretend. And I remember as a kid, I didn't understand why, if this is a hair tie, right, and if it's pink, why can't I tell others like outside that it's pink? So like just having to hide that misery. But actually also at the same time, like when I went to college, we got free mental like counseling. I went to counseling, whenever I could, learning to talk it out, and I tried out. And I also did a bit therapy after I got out of college. At some point it was no longer useful for me because I just couldn't stand talking so much. One thing led to another. That's how I found my spiritual path, because I felt it's like more like it's more practical, and also it gets results. So yeah, I never had that. I had the background, but also didn't have that much fear to not talk about it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny because therapy in the Asian culture is like a big taboo. Like nobody really goes to therapy. Yes, you can't talk about it because like then it's airing the dirty laundry. So I think it's so amazing that you are so self-aware that you realize that, it's helpful to go. You realize there's something internally that's bothering you, and then that, it was good to go and talk to somebody else about it. So today, then, what drives the choices that you make in your life?
Today, it's the understanding, and I've come a long way, so just for, I guess, for the listeners, like if you feel like you're not here, like don't beat yourself up about it, because I know, like if 5 years ago, if I listened to this, I would. Today, some of the things that drive me, my choices, one is understanding that, first of all, I love myself, right? So if I love myself, what does it mean? Not eating better, all the basic things that we all know: eating better, exercises more, meditate more, doing all this healing work. So one is I love myself, and also the understanding that when I am better, I can help others better. I can help others better. I can help more people also find joy, also find that innate confidence in understanding who I am as a divine being. And also, so that's two. And then the I would say the three, like a bit higher is that remembering of the mission, like that where I'm not here just to be like a normal, I don't know, office desk worker, whatever, but like I'm here to help, to and which all of us, we can all be like this, we can all, and I'm here to help make this world a better place, so I'm here to help create like a different structure, a different system, a different kind of relationship where we relate to one another, not from like again that place of where I have to protect myself because I don't trust you, but really from like God to goddess, or God to God, with confidence to confidence. Yeah, more harmony and peace.
I love that. And then, so what has becoming spiritual really done for you, right? And then also, how did your family, like, do they know that you've become a teacher at the I think it's called the
Modern
Modern
Mystery School.
Mystery School, right? Or yes, sorry. And so, like, how did they respond to these choices that you have made, and how has that impacted your life?
Can you remind me the first question again?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
the
how has
spiritual.
becoming spiritual
Mm.
changed your life? Because that is a very alternative, quote unquote, alternative
Oh
choice
yes,
within our
totally.
culture, right? I think it's becoming more popular these days, but I don't think it's the traditional path
Totally.
that Asians take.
Well, you gotta think, what do you mean by traditional though? Because traditionally the East
Yes.
is a mystic,
Yep.
right? So
I love that you brought that up.
actually holds the
Mhm.
mystic energy, like the spiritual, that's why you
Yes.
see the stereotypical image, like the bomb,
Yep.
things like that. So traditionally we are the one that holds, I mean, again, everybody can be spiritual, but we hold
Yeah.
an energy.
Yeah.
I definitely think, like, I grew up in a not very spiritual world, like, we do celebrate our ancestor, but that's pretty much it, right? And I don't know, Jin, if like you do anything
Yes.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an atheist for most of my life because I couldn't understand why, if there was a God or multiple gods, I didn't understand why the world was so bad. Why would, if there's such exists a powerful being, why the world was so bad? And being spiritual helped me realize that God, or creator, divine, or whatever word source you want to use, like that higher power, that higher strength is within all of us. So if there is a problem, right, it's not about, oh my gosh, please, right? It's about us acting as the creator of our life and to fix it, to make that happen. And so the reason the world is so bad is because we've made it so bad. And that understanding really helped me with tons of traumas in my life where I felt I was alone, blah blah blah, right? So it helped me with that. And also it kind of verifying that and I think this is something I want to tell maybe like Asian women, right? Because this is the target for this interview is, even though you may feel like you don't have a voice, or even though you may feel like there's just a lot of like, rules you can't, you have to follow, but I know, especially for you, that you have that little voices within your heart that say something different. So I would just want to encourage you to listen to that voice, because that's what I did. I just had that voice that, okay, there has to be something more than this. And so spirituality is the thing that, for me, is the answer. And it's not just spirituality, it's like ancient spirituality that has been practiced for thousands and thousands of years, that has given, like tremendous result in my life and others. So that's it, kind of help fill that gap, because I don't think I would have been satisfied if it's just, my physical body, working in my career, things like that. And to answer your next question, yes, my family knows what I do. Admittedly, I learned, like, I left, I feel like I left Vietnam at a quite a developmental place in my life, in my, my the developmental age. So I'm still having trouble talking about spirituality in Vietnamese. It's just because I don't know the words. So I've been trying slowly to like join some Vietnamese spirituality groups just to understand the lingo and how they think. But I do, like, I'm trying my best to kind of explain to my parents what they do, what I do, and things like that. And they see the result. They see how, like,
That's
I used to not have makeup, nothing, like nothing on, so they see it, and they actually have all received certain works, which is so there's a session called life activation session, that activate your DNA and activate your potentials to like your different gifts and talents. And all of my family members has received it.
Okay.
So, and of course, like that's me living in integrity. If I like something, I share it with my family. So, that it's something that is good.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you shared the gifts that you have received with your family by giving them the books so that they can, if they choose to, follow through with it as well.
It's not a book. It's so I gave them a session.
Oh, a session. Okay.
Yeah, live active.
Awesome.
So that session kind of opens up different opportunities.
Very
and
cool.
And I could kind of observe from from afar. It may not be like always smooth sailing, but opportunities that they can take to live differently.
Yeah. And life won't be smooth sailings, right? Like that's what makes life life. And so I love the fact that they have all of these new opportunities opening up and that you're sharing it with them. So share with me, Ling, in terms of if somebody were to come to you and say, well, let me reframe that question, because it's more about what do most people come to you with? What are the issues, I'll call it, although they're never really issues, but what is driving them to come to you, and how do you help them and support them?
That's a good question. Thank you, Jen. I would say, most people come to me, sometimes for physical problems, because physical illnesses are a manifestation of emotional or mental issues or spiritual. Sometimes, but most of the time, it's honestly because they were fed up with their life, like with, again, that cycle of, adulting, really, that's what we call it, right? Where you have to, go to work, all that stuff, that cycle, and they feel trapped. And maybe a lot of them feel, like may have weak boundaries, and they don't know, okay, how can I establish stronger boundaries? And they may not realize that, but like during our consultation, which is like I give like a free 60-minute consultation just to get to know them. It usually comes out where, I don't have strong enough boundaries, so I feel drained, or I feel I can't speak up to others, which is very, very common, especially in women, but honestly, everybody. We can't. I don't know how to speak up for myself, and also ultimately, either right away or after a couple of sessions, it's always about, okay, now I want to figure out my, and I'm paraphrasing because everyone has used these different words, and sometimes it's not the same. But now I want to know my purpose. Now I want to figure out my purpose. I have people coming in and be like, oh, when, I want to figure it out, or sometime like after a year. We're just talking to a client yesterday, a year after his life activation, and now he's like, okay, I want to figure out what's next, like how I can do, and to like, to do good, so it's always coming from that desire to contribute, to make a good impact, either to the world and or to their family, which is definitely has been a theme.
I love that. And, I think one of the things that I think is a big misconception about purpose too is that it has to be big, right? Like meaning like you have to be like Gandhi-like purpose. And it doesn't always have to be that big. So the fact that they can come in and realize that their purpose may be just specific to their family, or it could be specific to something that's personal to them, I think is awesome, because then it takes away this, because I think people get into like analysis paralysis with purpose. It's like, oh my gosh, but is it big enough? Or, oh my gosh, is it like, is this really it? But if you feel that that's what it is, and it may not be quote unquote big enough, I guess via the perspective of the outside world, it doesn't really matter, right? It's still your choice, still the decision that you have in order to move forward with that purpose. So I love the fact that you help them to see that too.
Yeah, and another thing about purpose too, which I also like another myth. Let's debunk the myth. Is that people think that, oh, I want to figure out my purpose and follow it. Right? It's like I want to know it all in one go and then figure it and then fulfill it. But I'll tell you this. I've worked on this for years, and what I find is that you'll get like this glimpse or this like flashes of inspiration. Oh, let me try to do that. And then as I do that, I'm like, oh, I can try to do that. So as I kind of move forward on the path of progression in the business school, my purpose gets highlighted, like, more, like there's more open up, right? So you can start, like people can start with just their family, things like that. Just like whatever they think is what they're passionate about.
Right.
But the important piece is that you take action and you know, follow through, you fulfill it. And I can almost guarantee that,
The
you
next
know, like
step.
the next
Yeah.
step's gonna open up.
Yeah.
Or what can happen is the next step doesn't open up, right? So you kind of hit the ceiling, then you gonna ask yourself, okay, what's more? And that also can be, you know, when the path of progression in the mystical school opens up, because then it can lead you, like there will never be an end to your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it
Yeah.
to
No,
me.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating sometimes that you can't, I think as humans, we tend to want like all the
Want to know,
information. Yeah. And then like, you know, like boom, boom, boom. Okay, now we're done. Now what? But like in real life, it just doesn't happen that way. Right.
No.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So that is, and I think, you know, and I think part of that too, like I think all humans tend to do that, but I think even, I don't know if it's particularly in the Asian culture, but very much so in the Asian culture, we're very much task oriented, right? Like, okay, we do this, we move on to the next thing. We do this, we move on to the next thing. So that's been something that I've had to step back and like kind of reevaluate. Like, it's never really about the completion of the task, although there are certain things we do about consistency and discipline, etc. But there is just, it's never going to be as simple or as linear as like 1, 2, 3, and then we move forward. 1, 2, 3, and then we move forward, because it could be 1 and then 3 may come next, and then 2 then can come next. And then, you know, the circle, you know, may be completed at that point and we move on to another one. So yeah, there's just so much, I think, misconception out there in terms of like what this whole process looks like or supposed to look like.
And I will say though, like you say that like task oriented ability, that is a gift, you know. So that is, you know, like some people may see it as like, you know, a curse or whatever, but like that's a gift, because, you know, yeah, you know, like you said, we need to learn to be more flexible. But in that moment, let's say, you know, instead of going, we need to learn to go from A maybe to like, you know, A plus, right? But in like within A, for example, right, we can use that task oriented ability to get things done, and then still be flexible with, you know, the way the world works, or the way, you know, like your mission goes, things like that. So I really enjoy the fact that I
That's
can
great.
be
I love
focused
it.
with my task. But you know, but again, what is your strength versus what is your weakness? If your strength is being focused, then you may have to learn to be flexible and still be focused at the same time.
Yeah, it's allowing flow. I love that. And I love that different perspective. So thank you for sharing that, Ling. So where can the audience find more information about the work that you do, about the DNA activation, which just sounds so cool? How do they get in touch with you?
Yes, so I am based in San Francisco, and I see clients, you know, in San Francisco Bay Area. You know, I've had people like come in 2 hours to see me, but also just, you know, in the city, right? So it depends. And then you know, I travel to Toronto a few times a year, so definitely also open to doing sessions there too when I'm there. And most of the sessions, so I offer a different private session as well as classes. Some of the big thing, like a common thing, is life activation session, which we talk about activate 22 strands of your DNA and activates your unique, like maybe hidden gifts or talents. But also it heals certain ancestral patterns, which is what attracted me in the first place. And then there's also the Empower Thyself class, which is a 2-day class workshop that also is in person, where you know, the students will receive a lot of different teachings and rituals about, you know, how to use your about who you are, and also about like how to use your unique gifts to kind of, you know, navigate this world, and to again to not you know, to find joy and purpose through life, really, and also to have stronger boundaries, which is really important.
Yeah, no, that's great. And do you have a workshop coming up that you want to share about, or not yet?
Yes, I do. So let me think. I'm not sure when this is going to be released, but I am running a 4-week series called Reconnect, Cultivating Self-Trust, where I will be teaching different meditations. So there'll be like max meditation system on one Sunday. And then sanctuary meditation system on the other Sunday, where you'll learn different the tool to connect to your higher self, and then spiritual intuition on the next Sunday, to cultivate your intuitive ability. And it's going to be September 18th, the Sunday, and the next Sunday, the next Sunday, the next Sunday. And then also I have Empower Yourself coming up, I think in December or January of 2023. Yeah.
Very cool. And then where can they go? Is there a website that they can go to learn more?
Yeah, I'm at Magic with a K, so MAGICK of choice, CHOICE.com. And you can get in touch with me there. I offer a 60-minute free consultation via Zoom, so we can just chat more about. I love to talk to understand where people's story, where they're at, so that I can offer really useful insights. And usually we start, if you want to work with me, we start with a live activation session, and then we can just move on, depending on their needs. Yeah.
Awesome. And so one last question, since this podcast, we look at the intersectionality of authenticity, which we've done so much already, with success. I'd love to ask you, how do you define success?
For me, success is, for me, success is to be able to do what I love with the people that I love. Yeah.
Amazing.
So to have the amazing people in my life, and to do what really fills me with joy. It's not always easy, but it fills me with joy and with passion, and that's how I can talk about it authentically, because I'm not faking it. That to me is success. Living, showing up as who I am without having to hide any parts of myself. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Ling, so much for sharing so much of you with us today. It was such a powerful story, and I'm sure the audience benefited so much from learning more about you, the choices, how powerful they are, and also about how successful they can be. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Welcome back to another episode of the Being Unapologetically Authentic podcast with your host, myself, Jean Tien, and my special guest today,